Hello and welcome. My name is Miss Tina and you are listening to Squaziland, the occasional dose of my reviews, reactions and opinions. Today, in a very short time, I would like to talk about The Planet of the Apes. The Planet of the Apes was actually the first science fiction movie I have ever seen, the original one which Charles Heston made in the late 60s and 70s, and it made me immediately fall in love with science fiction. You know, it had everything. It had time travel, it had space travel, strange planet, monkeys. I don't really like apes or monkeys, but whatever, that's not the point. It's not due to this film, so don't worry about it. But the story itself was so intriguing and interesting that I fell in love with the genre itself. So whenever I see something about time traveling or traveling in space, I usually get hooked pretty fast. Of course, now you know, looking back to this original film made in the 60s, I realize its faults, its mistakes, but nevertheless, it was a great view from the first time, for the first time in my life, you know, back then. And, you know, I watched all all five of those films, basically, and I really liked them, you know? It wasn't bad at all. However, when I was in my 20s, I actually read the original novel. I saw that it was just a short novel, a very short novel, and I thought to myself, you know what, I could actually read it, and it completely changed my mind of the story itself. You know, at first, and the story of the movie is, well, you know, you can actually see the faults in the movie, so well, that's not possible. I don't think that's possible. You keep thinking like that. For example, when the main character, I think he was called Captain Taylor, he smoked in the spaceship. Really? So it was bizarre, to say the least. And of course, the events which unfold were a little bit sketchy, I think. But, you know, overall the movie was great, and I really liked the masks they were wearing, and I think the acting was okay-ish. It was weird, but, you know, it had a very different point of view than the book itself. I'm going to talk about the book in a little bit, but let's focus on the movie for now. So the movie was about humanity, and that basically the whole series, if we are talking about the 5 episodes of it, so it is, without any doubt, made in the Cold War, during the Cold War. And of course, its main message is that we shouldn't kill each other, we shouldn't be so aggressive, you know, we should look for peace, but we cannot find peace. And that's bad. Fighting is bad, and humans are bad because we have weapons and we kill each other. And of course, monkeys don't do that. So monkeys are very different. In the second film, they changed this. So monkeys, I think the monkeys try to kill each other. So it turned out that monkeys will eventually become just like humans. So they have the weapons. Of course, they are going to start killing each other. But the original message of the story was that monkeys are more peaceful, they are closer to nature, and therefore humanity is doomed because we are too aggressive, we kill each other, and that's bad. You know, it's a big simplification of the story itself, but that's what it is. Of course, in the book, it's different. When you think about it, the book was made in the early 60s and the movie was made in the late 60s. There shouldn't, you know, there shouldn't be a reason for such a huge or different kind of interpretation of it. Yet Pierre Boulez's novel is so much better than the movie or any of the movies. Well, maybe the last trilogy isn't that bad. It's not that bad. Every interpretation has its own merits. I believe in that. However, the original novel was a social commentary. It was a social commentary on how humans become lazy to think. Because, huge spoilers, humanity's downfall wasn't just the rise of the apes and that they became smarter. Humanity's fault lied in the fact that they were too lazy to think. And that is what's happening in the novel, that humans thought that, should I be thinking? No, I would rather not. I would be just comfortable in my own house. I would be just comfortable without any responsibility. Humans are pushing away their responsibilities. They don't want to work. They don't want to do anything in life. They just want to relax and enjoy it. And they think less, and less. They don't want to think. And they are intellectually declining. And that is what the novel is about, basically. And you know what? Pierre Boulle saw this in the 60s. He saw that humans are looking for comfort, but they are not looking for education. They don't try to do better stuff. They don't try to invent more stuff. Of course, back then he couldn't have known that, there was a area of computers. It was a bit with, in the 60s, there weren't many people who actually had computers. Maybe a few of them, or the few scientific labs perhaps, but computers weren't a thing back then. But even back then, people were lazy to think. Now imagine today's society, many people just don't want to think. They just want to watch, they want to consume, and that's it. And when they think about, I should work? No, I don't think so. And this is what Pierre Boulle is really referring to, that if you don't strive to know more, if you don't strive to question your basic knowledge, what you are taught, because, it's not just about the decline of learning, or people don't want to learn anything. It's also about the old doctrines, the old stuff people used to learn. The monkeys' society for 10,000 years didn't really go further than the society they have taken over from the humankind. Why is that? Because they weren't curious enough. Some of the chimpanzees, as Zera and Cornelius mentions, were actually innovative. They tried to go beyond. They were curious. They were thinking. And this is where humanity should go to, according to Pierre Boulle, or according to my interpretation of the novel. And it's very interesting to see that during the whole thing. And also, when you look at the relationship between Ulysses, because the main character in the novel is called Ulysses Moreau, basically named after Ulysses or Odysseus. It depends on which translation you like to use, the Greek one or the Roman one. But Ulysses, I think more people are familiar with Ulysses, so I go with that. So Ulysses' relationship with Zera is an intellectual relationship. He and Zera connect on an intellectual level, and it is a higher level than he connected to Nova. And I think, the movie skipped this whole thing and they reinvented this scene, and they used it in the later movies when Cornelius and Zera actually escaped the planet of the apes, because before it actually got destroyed. However, in the novel, it was a bit different. It was a bit different, and Ulysses was actually attracted to Nova, and he was like, I really want this woman, and I really don't want her to be anybody else's but mine. And he realized that his sexual instincts are stronger than his sort of common sense. So for love, he did things he would normally not do. And it was very funny to imagine how he danced in front of Nova in order to gain her trust and everything. Nova was portrayed to be, well, if I had to compare the characters, or if I have to make any comparison, comparisons, I would say that Ulysses Merrill thought of himself as a new Adam. He wanted to teach humanity, he wanted to guide humanity to a new world. He wanted to teach them, to give their senses, their intellectual thinkings, the intelligence back. However, the apes didn't want any of that. They, in the novel, they accepted him. They were like, you are an intelligent person, good for you. However, you want to teach others to be intelligent too? We are not going to let you do that. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, Ulysses had a child from Noah. And of course, the child seems to be very smart. He has the glint in his eyes, which means that he is actually smart, and he will be as smart as his father, or maybe even smarter. And the apes realize that this is a great danger, so they want to kill them. Not publicly, just the usual way. And this is where Zera and Cornelius decides to help them escape, and they escape the planet of the apes. And they go back to Earth, and they realize that 800 years have passed since then, and Earth itself became like the planet of the apes. And Ulysses thought that maybe there are humans out there who don't want to be lazy to think. He is really an optimistic person. However, his own downfall is that he thinks too much of himself, and he's a representation of humankind, that humankind thinks too much of themselves. And even when, there is the infamous scene when Zera kisses Ulysses, it happens in the movie too. In the movie, Charles Heston just leans in and mwah, it was a kiss, and they were like, oh, that's kind of weird. However, in the novel, they didn't kiss. They want to kiss because, they have this intellectual connection to each other, and it's like, it's something, it's really a true connection. But before the kiss, Zera is like, sorry, you are just too ugly. And it was brilliant, because that's what actually Ulysses thought too, that she's kind of ugly, but on an intellectual level, we are so close to each other. It's like we are soulmates or intellectual partners, and we should just unite ourselves in a kiss. And the woman says, no, you are ugly. And that hurt him, of course, hurt his pride. But at the same time, you could see that Zera had her own pride too, and she said, sorry dude, you're a different species, and that's kind of weird. And in the movie, nothing like that has happened, which is a shame. So overall, the story of the Planet of the Apes is what it is. So it's a social commentary, whether it's an American interpretation or a French interpretation, whether it's about the intellectual decline of humanity or the decline due to having wars. I think that in both cases, it's important to remember that knowledge is power. And just because you are all alone, it doesn't mean that you cannot have friends, who can support you, like Zera and Cornelius supported Ulysses or Captain Taylor in the American version. So there are always good-natured people and apes. There are always living beings or intelligent beings who are kind-hearted and nice, and they are willing to help. However, you should also note that human pride gets in the way too many times, more than it should. And I think that's the gist of these stories. I do have to talk about one thing, and that is the continuation of the movies. I talked last about the movies because usually people don't. I think that they don't talk about the book enough. However, in the movies, they make an interesting twist of it. So in the second movie, the whole planet disappears. And the big difference between the movie and the novel is that in the movie they are on Earth. However, in the novel they are visiting another star, another solar system, whatever. So they are on a very different planet. It's just that they very similar to Earth, but it's not Earth. But the same thing happens on Earth. So I think that the movie did a great thing by, skipping this part and saying that, well, this is Earth. It simplified it, and I think it was for the greater good. So, what was my point again? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about one more thing, and these are the other movies, the rest of the movies. So the first movie, it had an iconic scene. There was a Statue of Liberty. Charles Heston was like, "Oh, what have you done, you damn people?
You maniacs! You blew it up! Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!"
And, he despised humanity. You would say Merrill wasn't as dramatic as him. He just arrived on Earth and he saw monkeys and gorillas and apes, and he was like, what? And then Nova and his son Sirius escape from the planet, and they are in space, and they hope to find a planet where humans or something like that exist, who don't want to kill them, and they can live happily ever after, or another planet which can become the planet of the humans and not the planet of the apes. However, in the movie, Taylor dies and everyone dies in the end. So the second movie is basically about the death of the planet. The third movie reconnects the dots a little bit, because it shows that Cornelius and Zera escape before the whole planet gets destroyed, and they got sent back to Earth. And I think it was after, when was it? It was after Taylor left, and I think Taylor didn't go back for 20 years or more than 20 years. And of course on Earth people were arguing what could have happened to Taylor. And when Zera and Cornelius arrived, they tried to be very careful, but they were kind of careless. I'm not sure if I like that character development of them, because Zera was a very, very intelligent woman, and I thought that showing her being that kind of a bumbling idiot kind of role is really not suitable for a scientist, as she was a scientist and she was very, very smart. So I didn't like that part of the third movie, showing that she's like that. Of course, she and Cornelius have a child, but they get killed. However, the child survives, and later on, Petzer got killed by a space virus or whatnot in the fourth or fifth movie. And then monkeys became pets, and chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas, they became pets. And these pets were intelligent, and then they rose again humanity. So there were lots of different things. I really like that aspect of it. Later movies, not the Tim Burton one, but the new movies, The Rise of the Planet of the Apes and The Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, it takes the story to a different dimension. I think that these movies use the post-apocalyptic thinking of I forgot the name of the movie, help me out. 12 Monkeys, yes, the 12 Monkeys from the mid-90s. If you haven't watched that movie, watch it, it's brilliant. So they use that type of thing, that there is a virus, everyone is dead, but not really, and those who are alive. Yeah, I think it's an easy way out. So I think the Planet of the Apes has a very interesting concept, and this is the reason why it gets rebooted and remade so many times. It had comic books, it had the original movies, it had the novel the movies were based on. And every time they reboot it, or every time they try to make this series happen, every time they adapt it, basically, it gets another message to it. And I really like that it has a different message to it. And the original story just goes on, we have this kind of message. So the Planet of the Apes novel and the original films were very good. I really like them a lot, and I really advise you to actually watch at least the first movie, not all, but the first movie, and then read the novel. You can see the differences, and in the novel you get an extra. The novel's charm is that it is better when it is read. I'm not kidding you. So when you read a novel, you read about monkeys and your mind is like a gorilla in a suit. And in the novel, you tend to forget that the main characters, apart from Ulysses, of course, the main characters are actually apes, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and it really shows you that how humanity is so humanity's pride is so huge, and we don't even consider other beings being intelligent. So the Planet of the Apes novel and the movies are actually not that far away from each other. Of course, there are some differences between them, but the messages are similar. Either way, humanity is doomed. On the one part, it is doomed because we don't want to use our intelligence, we are losing our senses, we don't want to be smarter, we just want to have comfort in our lives. And on the other hand, we have this, that we want war, we fight everything that moves and everything that seems to be a threat to us. And this is an interesting message, I think, that what if we actually see in our real lives intelligent life force? What would we do? We cannot even like ourselves. How can we bear with another intelligent species? And by intelligent, what do I mean? There are quite some things you can actually think about. And this is what the novel is all about, and the movies, that you have to think about them. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope we see each other next time. Bye-bye.